Hey y'all, and welcome to Shade in the City. It's your girl Treese here. And of course, we are here to go Beyond the Gates, season 1. This is episode 86. And yeah, y'all be on the lookout because you probably, if I have it my way and time permits, you're gonna get 3 today. Okay. You're gonna get 3. But right now, I'm working on, 86 and 87 and getting those out to you. But if you get lucky, okay, if you really wanted to be a happy Friday, then I'll try to get y'all number what was it? What would it be? 88 from today's episode. But anyway, so yeah, y'all, thank you so much for being here. All of my BTG Shade squad, and all of my new viewers. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button. Um, if you haven't and you're liking the vibe, please go ahead and subscribe. And also, I want to give a big shout out to all my members. We had a good time last night, as usual. And so I just want to thank y'all, and for all the members that weren't in the live last night, hopefully you caught the replay and you enjoyed it. So yeah, y'all, let's get into this episode. Episode, what did I say? 86. So this would have been Wednesday's episode of Beyond the Gates. Let's get it. Okay, so Smitty shows up down at the station. He brings Jacob some coffee as a thank you. And Jacob lets him know that Marcel thinks he's been trying to win a Pulitzer Prize at his expense. And he shooketh. Okay. And so Jacob is confused because he's like, I don't know why my father and Marcel came over here trying to convince me not to talk to you, and thinks that, Marcel is abusing his dad for his own gain. Then he mentions how Smitty, Marcel mentioned Smitty hacking into his bank accounts, and he referenced the 2 deposits and how he knew it was going to make him look bad. And Smitty tells him that crooked cops tend to underestimate journalists. Okay. Then let Jacob know that he wanted Marcel to know it was him that went into his account, and feels like he must be getting close because Malone's mask is starting to crack. He brings up the night 2 years ago, and he knows that something big has happened for Marcel to receive the big payout that he did, and everybody just kind of forgot about it. But he said, I'm not letting it go. And he asked Jacob, but I understand if you can't deal with it, it's too hot in the kitchen, you need to get out. And Jacob said, no, I'm all in. He said, so they start breaking things down, and Smitty mentions the 5K payment Marcel said he won. And Jacob said he would believe that if he hadn't seen with his own eyes of Joey handing him an envelope full of cash. Okay. And I do remember that. And Smitty brings up the $500,000 Marcel received and how it all links up to the night Martin came home all dazed and confused 2 years ago. And so Jacob ask him, he's like, well, have you tried talking to Martin? And Smitty says, look, I've tried and I keep hitting the wall. Okay. And I was telling myself, I was like, Jacob, you've asked this question already. And Smitty has clearly answered you already. But okay, I can understand persistence. Okay. He brings up how Martin keeps giving him the flat tire story with Vernon, and how Vernon testifying at Marcel's IA hearing was kind of weird and it's not adding up. And so Smitty questions if Marcel was working that night. And so Jacob goes to look up his work schedule, and he remembers being there late that night to take his detective exam. And then he has this flashback to, I guess, well, we end up knowing that it's Elon who kind of just walks back or brushes past him and almost knocks him over. And Jacob is trying to get his attention, but he's out of it. And we'll get there. I don't want to let the cat out the bag too fast. But Jacob said something. I was like, that's a great point, Jacob. So we see Martin at home. He is paranoid, peeping out the windows. He always feel like somebody's watching him. Okay. So that's when Samantha walks in, and because apparently he had texted her, and he scolds her for taking too long to get home while she's trying to figure out what the hell the emergency is. So Martin tells her that, look, you in for the night. And then Terrell comes down and lets her know, don't even try to argue with him because he's pissed that, I had KKK Kenny over to play chess. Okay. Samantha wants to know, well, what does that got to do with me? And Tyrell tells her, I don't know, but I believe he's overreacting. So Martin is literally still out this window, searching, 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 searching. That's really what he was on. Okay. Samantha is mad that they're on lockdown because Tyrell let KK Kenny in the house. And Martin tries to make them understand and explains that there's threats that he faces and he doesn't want to disclose, but blames it on, him being a congressman and everyone not agreeing with his policies. And so Tyrell accuses him of just basically being a helicopter parent. And Martin refuses. He said, look, I don't care what you say. He told Tyrell the other day, I am the adult. You are the child. I don't owe y'all no explanation. If y'all don't go upstairs and go get up to them rooms that I pay for, get out my face. So Martin tells him that, look, this is about your safety. And y'all, you know what? You can see your friends at school. And so they're like, but we're on summer vacation day. And so Tyrell points out, yo, are you okay? Are you okay? You really starting to scare us. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all the elevators aren't going to the top floor. So they're like, well, how long are we gonna be restricted to the house? And Martin tells him until further notice, pretty much. So of course, Samantha is just like, I don't know what's going on. They're both kind of taken aback by the whole, and he's like, just please don't ask me anything else and just give me some peace. And I said, well, if that ain't a conversation shut down, I don't know what is. So then we move over to Marcel, who had found Randy and dragged his butt back into Joey's casino. So Joey reminds him how he was the only person that would give him a job because he felt like he was smart. But Joey questions Randy, when did you start thinking that you were smarter than me? I said, ooh. So Randy is pleading with Joey, and he said, look, I needed something for a fresh start. I plan to, pay you back with interest. And Marcel lets Joey know, I found him at the airport terminal with a ticket to Bali. And I said, so you was coming back? And then the bad part about it is, and we talked about this in the membership last night, where was the kid and the baby mama that you care so much about? Asking for a friend. I don't know. Just, So Joey asked Randy, well, what was your plan? And so he was like, no. So Joey asked him, he was like, so what was the plan? You was going to lay low in a cheap hotel and sneak back into the country like I forgot about you and the fact that you took my money? And so he's like, look, so not only have you lied, but now you've stolen from me. We have a very serious problem. So he warns Randy, you know what? It's going to be real cold where you going, okay? So Randy is still pleading with Joey when Joey brings up how he didn't finish the job like he said he did. And Randy claims that he pow KKK Kenny once and he went down. And then when he went to pow him again, he said that the weapon jammed and KK Kenny ran off. I said, this is the worst set of criminals I have ever met in my life. So Joey asked about, well, okay, so what about the money then? And Randy says, look, I did it because I knew I messed up, but I'm here now, back, looking you in your face, being honest. And Joey said, okay, so basically you made up the whole witness story as well. And so Randy said, I lied. And I thought it would buy me some more time till I could figure out how to make this up to you. Okay. And so Joey isn't trying to hear it and tells Randy that, look, at this point, you are no longer useful. And he looks at Marcel and he said, and what do we do with toys that we no longer play with? Okay. So Randy promises, look, I'm going to find KKK Kenny and I'll go and I'll finish the job. And Joey says, thanks, but no thanks. You don't get another chance. So then Randy was like, well, what about my kid and the baby mama? And Joey was like, look, I ain't gonna bother them because I got you. Okay. I'm just worried about you. But even still, don't get up in Joey's face now and act like you worried about that child and that baby mama when you was at the airport by yourself. Okay. So Randy's like, so what are you and Timu Shaft, Marcel, plan to do with me? And Joey said, look, I don't get my hands dirty like that. So whatever Marcel want to do, that's his business. And so Marcel's getting ready to take him out the room when they're met in the doorway or walking in is Doug and Vanessa. Surprise, surprise. So Randy tells them, look, y'all need to go. And Joey seconds that. And Vanessa recognizes Marcel as well and asks him, well, I wonder what Eternal Affairs would have to say about your new moonlighting gig. And I said, ooh, okay. I loved this Vanessa. I was here for it. I just like this whole new energy that she brings. Malone gets ready to say something smart to her when Joey interrupts and asks Marcel, look, can you please leave the room? Because, you know, Marcel ain't got much of a filter. So Doug lets Joey know that Randy has always had his back since day one, and he's there to return the favor. And so Joey tells Doug and Vanessa, look, I really need y'all to mind y'all married business, okay? Don't get mixed up in this. And so Doug says, look, we know enough, and Randy is spooked. And so we took him to the airport. I said, not you adding yourself, implicating yourself. So then Vanessa tells him, and Marcel bringing this man back at pow point makes it their business. And I said, well, and you could tell Joey was not pleased, but he was also turned on. He was. All right. So now we see Ashley, who mentions that Danny is across the room burning a hole through them, or him rather. So Andre assures Ashley, look, Danny's fine. When Danny happens to invite herself over, she hit a Allison, okay? And she's like, oh, I'm surprised to see you guys here together. And so she decides to pull up a seat and says, you know, look, I hope I'm not interrupting. And I said, well, you definitely are, but clearly you don't care. So Ashley tells her, yeah, you are, because me and Andre were actually having a great time. And Danny asked, oh, was this a new development? And Andre said, look, no, we've been cool since I got back. And, you know, this is just the first little date. And so then Danny gets into how she knows Ashley is newly single. But then she looks at Andre and tells him he's known as the revolving door with a woman in every zip code, and questions if Ashley is another pit stop on his map. I said, ooh, way to make a girl feel small. So Andre tells Danny that there was someone that he thought he could be serious with, i.e. her, but she was too busy living in her past and didn't know what she wanted, and made him a side plot in her story. And so Danny asked, well, what drew you to this woman and what was she like? And so they go into this whole thing, but he talks about, well, she was a lot like you and she had main character energy, and she was like, oh, and she runs through people's lives like they're not important. So Ashley was like, well, do I know her? And Andre's like, look, who it is ain't important. And I was like, Ashley, how are you not picking up on these small innuendos? Like, they're clearly talking to each other, right? But it's okay, because what did Danny say? She's naive and wide-eyed, so it's okay. So Danny was like, oh, well, she sounds riveting. And so Ashley says anyone who had shot or missed a shot was someone so genuine, let Andre slip through their fingers. And so Danny said, well, yeah, that woman must need her head examined. And Andre said, look, I wouldn't go that far as call a woman crazy. He said, I can understand when someone's been hurt before, how certain feelings can stick around for a while. And Danny asked him, well, what was the woman's cardinal sin then? And so Andre says, look, I'm not trying to judge, but consistency matters because it helps you know where you stand. And he explains that someone is still holding a torch for their ex, they should be honest about it since they can see the smoke signals coming off them anyway. I said, oh, shots fired. Okay. So Danny says maybe the problem wasn't her torch, and maybe he wasn't worth keeping it lit for. So then, of course, Andre has to remind her that he has options and his references are impeccable. He says he never leaves a lady unsatisfied. And Danny said, well, except for one, apparently. And I said, oh, it was spicy. It was spicy, and I loved it. And I was here for it because it just made Ashley irrelevant at the table. Now, back at the casino, Joey demands that Vanessa and Doug take their shit and go. Okay. And she reminds him that, you know, look, well, usually enjoy my company. And said, well, so what? Does a potential unaliving suddenly make you a little antisocial? I said, Vanessa, I was with Doug. Stop antagonizing this man. Now, I didn't want Doug to say that, and we'll get there, but I was like, Vanessa. And she's like, look, Randy looks like that. Okay. Warmed over, and he has a pet detective, and he has your pet detective bringing him in at pow point. So she questions, so what's next? A midnight swim in concrete shoes? That was cute. And so Doug advises her, look, don't antagonize this man. And I said, Doug, if you don't shut up, because you are such a BAN right now, you are really giving that energy. Okay. The fact that this woman has more cojones than you is beyond me. And Randy, beyond me. Okay. Joey advises her, look, I think you need to listen to your husband, and tells her this conversation is over. Vanessa agrees and lets him know that they're leaving with Randy. The conversation is done and we're leaving. And so Joey said, look, playtime is done. You need to go back behind them gates where you came from. And Vanessa is standing 10 toes down. I was so here for it. So Joey tells Doug, you know what? It's time for you to check your woman. And Doug lets him know that's not how we operate. She checks me. You should know better than I do that I can't tell my wife to do nothing. And she ain't gonna listen to me because she really ain't got no respect for me either. Duh. Okay. Doug says, we'll leave, but Randy's coming with us, or else things will get complicated. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't even know why Joey felt threatened by that. I literally would have looked at Doug and been like, I feel like your wife. No one respects you, buddy. So Vanessa tells him, look, you need to think carefully, reminds him that, their relationship is mutually beneficial, okay, in more ways than one. And lets him know that, it would be a shame to throw it all away. So Joey warns her that she's playing a very dangerous game. And Vanessa reminds him, hurting Randy could really cost you. So she says, so on that note, Randy will remain perfectly healthy and free from your domain. And then tells him that Randy should be unharmed and he'll disappear, and Doug and herself will make sure of it. And so Joey was like, and what happens if I refuse this? And Vanessa said, then I'll walk permanently. And I said, this is the power of the PUSSY. Okay. Because he folded. He folded. All right. So Joey tells Randy, you know what? I'm tired of looking at you. Get out. So Randy stands there in disbelief instead of running like hell. Did anybody else feel that way? Like he was just a little too calm and standing there a little too long. And Joey tells him, look, only reason I'm going to let you live is because you did do me a one-up by letting me know that my wife was cheating on me with the dealer or whatever. So basically that's protecting your life for now. And he warns Randy, wherever he ends up, he better count his damn blessings. So then as they all get ready to leave, he calls Vanessa. He said, you, I need you, come back. So Doug isn't happy about this. And again, what man lets his wife stay with the mobster that she's screwing? That I just don't see it for Doug. Doug's stupid behind lets Vanessa stay there. And he's like, well, I'm just a little bit worried because, Joey is by no means Mr. Forgiveness. And Vanessa lets it be known. And I'm not asking for it either. Say, go Vanessa. So Doug and Randy leave to go have a drink. And she asks Joey, what is your problem? And so he tells her, you know what? My problem is you sticking your nose in my business. And then he scolds her for crossing the line. But then Vanessa ends up seducing him and making him forget. And he lays her out on the poker table. And they do what they do. Okay. Back over at Martin's house, the smarty kids have finally conceded and they decided to stop going back and forth with Martin. Okay. So Martin is still looking shook up after he checks and locks the doors and he grabs a baseball bat. Meanwhile, Smitty is back at the station letting Jacob know that, he feels like Martin is in danger and said, so if you want to pull back from the situation, it's a lot going on. It's a messy situation. If you need to pull back, let me know. And Jacob said, nah, I need some answers for myself. So Smitty decides to leave. So he's like, I don't want Naomi blaming me for you getting home too late. And then Jacob mentions how earlier he said that, you said that you would protect Martin at all costs. And Smitty said, and did. And so Jacob was like, okay, cool. I just want to make sure you said what you said. I want to know where you stand, right? So then Elon rolls up on Jacob after Smitty has left, asking him, like, are you good? And so Jacob blames it on being tired, and he has another flashback to running into his dad that night 2 years ago. And Jacob lets him know that, look, I can't shake this Smitty Marcel thing. So he starts telling Elon that, look, always looked up to you, admired you, wanted to measure up. Said, but I got some questions and I need some answers, okay? So then he lets him know that he knows about the 2 deposits that Marcel received, and Elon dismisses it and tells him that, Smitty is on a witch hunt. And so Jacob says he doesn't think he is, and says something went down around the same time Malone deposited that money in his account. So Elon is like, look, there has to be an explanation. And Jacob explains, and Malone's story about receiving a shared inheritance from his sister sounds crazy as hell, especially since we can't verify it because the sister is no longer living conveniently. You know, God rest her soul, of course, if there's even a sister. So Elon was like, so what are you asking me, Jacob? And Jacob thinks that, you know, Marcel thinks his secrets are buried. But Smitty is like a pit bull with a bone. And he asked his father, do you know what Smitty might fall upon? So Elon is like, well, why would you think that I have any idea of what happened 2 years ago? And he tries to blame, you know, I'm getting old and, you know, his lack of memory or whatever. And so Jacob says, nah, but that night was crystal clear to me. He said, because that's the night I took the detective exam. And so, of course, this triggers his father's memory. And then he said, he then talks about how he thought it was weird because he saw his dad come into the station that night and he looked like the devil was on him. And I said, oh, that's strong. And then he didn't even walk past Jacob, didn't even notice him. And so Elon was like, why would that stick out in your mind? And Jacob says, because you showed up in street clothes, which is weird. And as a police chief, why wouldn't you ever come presenting professional? I said, oh, okay. How the kids do it? Clock that. Okay. He tells Elon, and that's the same night that Smitty said Martin came home in different clothes as well. He says that the puzzle pieces are adding up to something ugly, and clearly it's bad if Martin is still having nightmares years later. So then Jacob says, you know, look, I've learned everything I know from you, but I'm gonna ask you one last time. Do you know what happened that night? And so Elon lets Jacob know that he knows it doesn't add up, and says that his quest for justice is blinding him, and says, you know, I can't tell you anything because there's nothing to tell. I said, oh. And Jacob knew he was lying. And he advises him, but you know what? I think that you should stick to the assigned cases that you can solve and not try to manufacture crimes that don't exist. And I said, oh, not you trying to gaslight, make them feel crazy. But that's what he did. Smitty has returned home and he finds Martin on the couch having another vision. He wakes him up and lets him know that, look, you're home, you're safe, calm down. Martin tries to play it off like, I just fell asleep working. And Smitty tells him, no, you were having another one of them nightmares, the same one that you keep having. And so Martin's like, okay, I don't want to talk about it. You already know how I feel about this. And Smitty says, I know something happened that night. And that's why you on the couch sleep with a weapon by your side. Okay. And so he's like, can you please be honest with me? Even though Martin lets him know that, look, I'm just not sharing. I'm just not doing it. So Smitty says, you know what? If you did something, can you please tell me before it ruins both of us? And Martin tells Smitty, if he's holding back, it's because he wants to protect their family and their future. And so Smitty was like, I don't need protection. I just want you to be honest. And so Martin tells Smitty, look, I'm tired. I just ain't got it to do tonight. And so Smitty's like, can we talk in the morning? And so Martin agrees, but we all know that talk ain't gonna happen. Martin has conveniently avoided that conversation in July. The show started in February, 6 months, 7 months. At this point, it's not gonna happen. Back at Uptown, Ashley is trying to redirect the conversation when Danny asks for her wide-eyed wisdom and asks, well, whose side are you on? And Ashley responds, the side with my bet on it. I said, And look, she looking at Andre, and Ashley tells Danny, well, you know what? I'm ready to call it a night. So I'm going to go to the bathroom and freshen up before we leave. And once she's gone, Danny tells Andre that she is absolutely precious, like a baby deer finding her footing in the forest. I loved it. Then tells him it's commendable for him to offer his mentorship to someone so naive and impressionable. And Andre tells her, look, drop the performance, okay? Because I am not entertained. And so Danny lets him know, I'm not jealous of Ashley. If anything, I'm experiencing secondhand embarrassment from this narrative that you're creating in your mind, okay? And so Andre tells Danny, look, your anger isn't for me, okay? And you're upset because you realize what you carelessly threw away. Danny goes on a tangent about how no one explained to her how appreciative she should have been and the prayers she and gratitude she should have put out that Andre looked her way. And so Andre said, look, I just want to be done with this. And I just need you to be honest for once. And he tells him that the conversation bores her like she bores him, apparently. And so Andre lets her know she entices. She doesn't bore him. She entices and challenges him. But she's also confuses and annoys the hell out of him. And it's not that you bore me. That's not what our back and forth is about. He tells her it's about intention. And either she wants what they have or she doesn't. And literally, I thought of every little thing I do never sings enough for you. That just in sync, yeah. He brings up 1 minute. She runs to tell Nicole, but then the next, when Bill snaps his fingers, she's gone. And so he's like, so what is it going to be? And Danny responds, both or neither. She explains that life is not that simple, and that's why he couldn't handle it and why he ran off to find someone so basic. I loved all the Ashley shade. So then Andre tells her that, look, I have never met anyone like your crazy ass in my life, Danny. So Danny tells him, and you won't if you keep messing with post-pubescent nurses who still get carded at happy hour. I said, Danny. So Ashley returns and she's like, what are y'all talking about? And so she tells Andre she's ready to go and even offers to give Danny a ride home. And Danny declines the offer and talks about how she'll stay rather than go back to her empty house and her empty life. And that's the only part I didn't like. I was like, don't do that in front of Andre. Don't give him that. And so she's like, y'all go have fun. And so Andre took his shot, and we will. Okay. And so he apologizes to Ashley on their way out. But Ashley tells him he's not the one that needs to be apologizing. She thinks it's Danny. And I'm sure because she probably heard what she said. Oh, well. All right, y'all. So that was episode 86, which would have been Wednesday's episode of Beyond the Gates. If you guys have not already, please make sure that you've hit that like button. Make sure that you comment. Make sure that you subscribe. And make sure you hit the notification bell. Also, make sure you're following us on all the platforms, which is now TikTok, IG, Blue Sky, X. Yes, I'm back on there. And Facebook. So yeah, y'all go follow us on all platforms. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you in advance. And I will spin the block and catch you for episode 87 and hopefully 88 before the end of the night. Because I got to get on the road again. Another weekend, y'all. Another weekend. But let me not complain. If I ain't have nothing to do, I might be complaining. So, but I appreciate y'all. Love y'all. And happy Friday. And like I said, I'll spin the block and catch you for 87. Bye-bye.